So each week when we sit and we watch these games in the studio, we talk after the first slate of games and in the second slate of games. We think, what are we going to lead the show with? Like, how are we going to start this thing? And today we were struggling a little bit after the first slate. We were like, oh, something in the later games will pop up, and that's what we'll do. And we got about halfway through the late games, and it's like, oh man, like there's nothing really grabbing our attention here from this entire day about how we're going to actually start the podcast. And then, thank God, the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants come out of nowhere and save the day with the most ridiculous ending to an NFL game that I can remember in a very long time.
Just let the football gods take the wheel, man. Just trust.
Sometimes you got to hand it over.
Trust in the way that this whole thing was designed. The way this is scheduled, something's going to pop. It always happens. Just believe. And did I think it would involve a 33-point fourth quarter by the Denver Broncos? Absolutely not. But I knew something would grab our attention. And boy, did that nonsense deliver.
I think it was Ian Eagle on the broadcast said that since 2003, teams were 0 and 1,601 when down 18-0, or when down 18 plus with less than 6 minutes left in the game. Derrik, that is now 1 and 1,601 after what happened to the New York Giants today.
The craziest part to me is I don't think I fully realized how crazy it was in the moment. Like, you just see, okay, touchdown, Giants and Broncos are going back and forth, and it felt like a lot was happening. To me, it was like some sort of traumatic event happened, and I didn't really process what had happened, what I was watching until after. It did not occur to me that they scored 33 points in a single quarter until it was all done and done with. As it was happening, I just didn't realize that the avalanche was quite that crazy. It was just an incredibly stupid football game that both teams tried very, very hard to lose, and the Giants tried just that much harder.
In fairness, they scored their first touchdown on the first play of the fourth quarter. They had gotten down inside the 5-yard line or whatever it was at the end of the third quarter. Then the fourth quarter starts, they scored that touchdown. And I even remember might have been after that touchdown or the next one, the one that Bo Nix ran in, he barely celebrated because the game was ridiculous. It was just this is cosmetically, this is going to look a little bit better in the final box score.
Very
it
garbage
probably
timing.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then the Justin Strnad interception is where the game turns. As soon as he picks that ball off, you're like, okay, this can actually happen now. And we said it in the moment. As soon as the Broncos picked off that pass, it's okay, they have to score quickly in order to make this a possibility. They do score quickly, and then we are off to the races.
Off to the races is it feels like an understatement. The sheer amount of stuff that happened, in the final 5 minutes here, and the stuff that you could harp on for a full segment. I mean, but the thing that jumps out to me immediately, it's amazing the swing from Riley Moss gets DPI to put this thing on the goal line, and you're just like, are we really about to reward the New York Giants for the underthrown ball DPI?
After the roughing the passer on a 4th and 19, where they would have been a yard short if they hadn't gotten the roughing the passer.
Which, for the DPI, I don't want to do the whole refs thing, and this is, to me, is not about an individual call. I feel like this year there have been so many DPIs on these underthrows where the DB does turn around and turn around the ball.
Yes.
It's not a flag.
And then they still flag it. I'm like, that's the point of the rule, is that okay, if he doesn't turn around and make contact, fine. I still hate it, but I understand that that's how it's supposed to be legislated. But there's been a lot of calls, including that one, where the guy does get his head around. What is he supposed to do?
And that happens. And then
we were only just getting started.
Sean Payton runs onto the field, gets a personal foul for running onto the field. And I'm not actually giving him credit for this, but if you want to really galaxy brain it, him getting the ball to the 1-inch line and the Giants then scoring on the Jackson Dart touchdown immediately instead of maybe getting stuffed from the 1-yard line. That's one of the reasons that the Broncos end up winning this game, is because they leave too much time for the Broncos on the other side of it, because it only took them one play to score after the pass interference.
You know what this also reminds me of is week 2, when the leverage flag cost the Broncos against the Indianapolis Colts, where they move it from whatever it was, a 61-yarder into very makeable range. And that's the reason Indianapolis beats Denver. Just the cosmic karma bubbling around the Broncos in these ridiculous late game situations. I guess they got their lick back this week.
Well, let's extend it to that final drive of theirs. That ball, the first one, Derrik, that he completes to Marvin Mims, Bo Nix is trying to throw the dig route to Courtland Sutton, and he misses it, so it lands in Marvin Mims' chest. They get it, spike it, and then he throws Sutton makes a ridiculous catch on the back shoulder ball in order to get them down even further. Me and Dave are sitting there being like, you got to get it down. You got to get it down. Somehow they spike it. They kick the field goal to win the game. So not only did the DPI and then that whole sequence give them the ball back, Bo Nix has his biggest completion of the entire game to a person he was not throwing the ball to.
That happened multiple times in this game. One of the touchdowns they scores is it gets tipped up in the end zone, and I think Franklin catches it in the back line.
And then the Giants had their own one of those.
Two ricochet touchdowns in one half of football.
Yeah, so Bo Nix's two key throws in this game were not to the person he was trying to throw the ball to. And the one where he is trying to throw the dig to Sutton and it ends up being caught by Marvin Mims on the seam. The reason I think we all know that he's throwing to Sutton, one, it just looks that way, but two,
he was looking at him. I watched all 22 of it.
And that's his favorite throw on the field. Sutton is cutting across the left hash. I'm going to throw that dig route. I know that's his favorite throw.
So I know you're right. Okay. That maybe isn't what he meant to do, but I do just love the poetic justice. Bo Nix struggled throwing the ball deep again today, and it
struggled period today.
Fair, fine, we'll get to that. But struggles throwing the ball deep, left a couple out there as he has done several times this year. 2 of 7 on attempts of 20+ air yards on the day, but the last two connected. The last two connected inside the final 2 minutes of the game, and were a huge part of why they scored on those final 2 possessions. I just
the Broncos deserve to win the game because they claw their way back in, and obviously it takes a few lucky breaks. And there's even there's a 4th and 3 pass interference on Andrew Phillips with 6.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. If that ball is incomplete, the game is probably over. There's a bunch of sliding doors moments, but let's just take into context the performance the Broncos had for the first 3 quarters of this game before we heap too much praise on how the game ended. They had a 27% offensive success rate through 3 quarters. They were averaging 3.8 yards per play. They were averaging 4.2 yards per attempt through 3 quarters. That was worse than what the Raiders did over the first 3 quarters of their game today. So this Broncos offense, they had that nice little blip against the Bengals, but for the most part, they have really, really struggled over the last couple games. Congratulations on the win today, but this is not a team playing very good football on that side of the ball, Derrik.
No, this is still a team that we talked about it earlier. It might have been on this week's preview show, or maybe it was the last show that we did, but they are a very limited offense in terms of the scope. It's a lot of, we're just going to boot. We're going to throw the flat a lot. We're going to RPO screen. They had, I forget when exactly in the game that this was, but I think they took a sack and got into 2nd and 18. And they threw a give up wide receiver screen on 2nd and 18. I'm this is manageable if we at least try as an offense. And they didn't. So that continues to frustrate me. They did not run the ball well for a lot of today, which, if you're going to be a little bit limited in the passing game, and we hope that we get our chunks by going into play action and throwing down the field that way, well, if you're not really running the ball, it can be a little bit difficult to get into that kind of flow and stay ahead of the sticks and stuff. So this is it's an offense that continues to frustrate me. Again, credit to them for getting a little bit of the variance there with a couple of the bounces there at the end, and Nix makes 1 or 2 throws that are pretty fortunate for them. But this continues to be an offense that the more of it we get this year, the less of it I feel like I trust going into the deeper part of the season.
It's been a rough couple of weeks until the final quarter today, where, again, they need this Trenard pick and so many of those coin flip moments in order to claw back into this game. That sequence where they were at 2nd and 18, I was actually showing Dave the sack that got them to that 2nd and 18 before we started recording the show. It's a boot, and Bo Nix is rolling out to his right, and he just sits there in the flat, outside the pocket, and gets a bug across a dashboard against Brian Burns when there's a guy sitting there in the flat. It's not a well-oiled machine on offense right now for the Broncos.
Burns' reaction on that snap seemed to be okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right. If you want to let me do this, I'll do it. If the offensive line coach, the fact that that's going to go down as a sack in the scorebook is not one that he's going to love. So the Broncos, again, their defense claws them back into this game. I think that the defense and the pass rush ultimately is what allows them to have enough moments to get back into it. On the Giants side of this, the Giants in the first half were doing so much good stuff. Derrik, I loved some of the things that they were doing, from heavier personnel. They were doing a lot of like vertical stuff down the right sideline where they're throwing away from Surtain and they're bleeding out that area with multiple tight ends on the field, getting the Broncos in base defense. They're getting chunks that way. And I'm getting ready to have this conversation about, oh man, like, Jackson Dart is not a perfect player, but he's making enough plays off schedule, out of structure, and they're doing enough with how they're setting up the offense where they're giving this team a chance. And that's the conversation I was ready to have about the Giants. And then we get into the second half, and all of those issues that the Broncos had down in the first half, the Giants had a 36% offensive success rate in the second half. And then Jackson Dart throws that pick, and now the game starts to crumble. And then you combine that with missing 2 extra points. And then when they're up 19-0, instead of kicking the extra point to go up 20, they decide to go for 2. It's now 19. And those 3 points ultimately, obviously, come up very big in what decides this game.
I mean, I'm kind of with you. The offense looked solid until really basically, like you said, the interception, where once Jackson Dart, I think through that, a lot of it fell apart. But like one of his best throws of the day was he had thrown a corner route to like the front right pylon to, I think it was Daniel Bellinger, and like that gets dropped. I thought that was an insanely good throw that he put on that guy, and it just wasn't caught. I also just thought like, yeah, they did a good job with some of their heavier personnel and just moving guys around. Like we've talked about a little bit this year, like Hufanga, I think you can get him to start chasing stuff. And the big Tyrone Tracy run that they have is they have the tight end splitting across, and Hufanga flies down like he thinks he's about to get boot and has to go cover that guy on the slide route. And it just opens up this huge valley of space, like in between that B gap, and Tracy just kind of takes off there. So I thought they did like some good, just, okay, we know who to pick on. And then it's funny you mentioned the Dart interception. Like I was, as that was happening, looking up stats of like, man, I feel like today he's replacing the blitz really well. And if he gets pressured, he can go and make some plays outside of the pocket. So I was looking up some numbers for that. And like, as I'm doing it, I see him like getting yanked to the ground and then throw the interception. I was like, man, we almost like, it was right there. We almost had this.
So you know what's wild about that? I was looking that up too, Derrik. Great minds think alike. Jackson Dart was good against the blitz in this game, except Vance Joseph did something that I thought was really interesting. And I went back and looked at this. Over the course of the year, he has blitzed 6+ 28 times. And in this game, he did it 5 against Jackson Dart. And like, obviously you're going to vary your blitzes against 5-man pressure. Jackson Dart, pretty good. He finished the day 8 of 14 for almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. When Vance Joseph blitzed 6 or 7, 1 of 4 for 13 yards with the back-breaking pick. Like when Sternad dropped out, there were still 6 rushers. Like, I mean, it's a gamble, but it's a gamble that pays off in a big way. And I just think on those occasions where Vance Joseph was willing to truly send the house at him, and it's a nice luxury when you have coverage players that can help you in that regard. That, I mean, that's the story of the game for me, because he played well enough to win this game, even if things bogged down in the second half. If you just see that guy, and obviously he didn't. If you go back and watch that play, he just did not account for Sternad drifting back there.
As we think about like the long-term implications of this, Derrik, I come out of this game not really feeling much better about the Broncos or much worse about the Giants. Is that weird? Because that's mostly my like, how do I think about this moving forward takeaway from what just happened today, even though the ending was obviously insane.
I mean, I at least again, for Jackson Dart to have like relatively acquitted himself pretty well for most of that game until that interception, I was like, okay, that's, you keep building, you keep stacking those, I can start to feel a little bit better about you. But the Broncos have won, like, I feel like most of the games they've won this year, I'm like, I don't know if I feel any better about Denver, but that's cool that they keep stacking them. So I like that is important for getting into the dance, right? But this is a team that if I thought they had this record by now, I would feel pretty good about like the formula of how they've gotten there. This feels like they've gotten there in about the ugliest fashion possible.
Yeah, I think that's right. And again, I'm just a little bit worried, more than a little bit worried. I'm pretty worried about what the offense currently looks like and the way the quarterback is playing.
It's what we were concerned about coming into the season. Don't have a whole lot of reason to feel better about it as we've gotten this far. I will say I have zero rooting interest. I'm sad that the Giants didn't pull this out for the simple reason that, like, if you just do one thing different and win this game, you've got a 2-game win streak against the reigning champ Eagles, the playoff team Broncos, who have a winning record, who are in the mix in the AFC West. I I think it would have been a news cycle unlike anything we've seen in a long time.
And it's amazing how fast that can change. It would have been Dart Mania for the next 7 days. Now the Giants are going to be licking their wounds.
And look, we know how this works too. Like every TV show, like the producers of every TV show were already blowing up their group chats with ideas for the week because the Giants looked that certain to win the game. And all that shit just goes down the drain in 5 minutes of game time.
As that was happening in the Giants-Broncos game, we had another team driving down 4 in the final 2 minutes of the game, trying to scrape out a win at the end. The Packers end up winning that game against the Cardinals, but still not the prettiest game from Green Bay. I mean, it absolutely could have lost this game if one or two things go slightly different against a Cardinals team that has been pretty forgettable this year. I want to ask you this because Derrik and I had this conversation on The Hangover because we talked about the Packers-Bengals game. The Packers right now are 4-1-1. How do you feel about like where the Packers are at this moment?
I'm annoyed. I'm officially annoyed just because when does it matter? And I get all that stuff. They're 4-1-1. The sky's not falling. They're in perfectly good shape. But like, let me answer your question with a question. Why is it this hard? What can you point to? Can you point to something? Like I know they had.
I actually think I can.
I know they had injuries on the offensive line that made it tough for things to be more cohesive in the early going of the season. But it seems like they're getting over that. I'd love to hear an answer. I just want to know why this team that we think so highly of hasn't had a stress-free week since week 2.
I was trying to figure this out as I was rewatching the game, and the Packers finished 3 of 10 on third down today. And so they finished 3 of 10. The Cardinals finished 7-14. And I think that went a long way in making the game feel a little bit closer. And the Packers, you watch them in those moments and you're like, man, this is a little bit frustrating. And then you look up the stats. The Packers lead the NFL in third down conversion rate. Okay. But here is the very subtle thing that I think makes this very funny. Packers lead the NFL in third down conversion rate because they are converting an absurd 48% of their third and longs this season. So on 3rd and 7+, they're the best team in the league by a wide margin. On third and short and medium, they are 24th in third down conversion rate. That's the Packers. They can get these chunk plays and they're incredibly explosive. And when it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 11, it's like, oh yeah, they can pick this up. And then it's 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3. And Jordan Love is throwing a 40-yard bomb for no reason. It's incomplete, and the other team is getting the ball. And so I do think that like collection of numbers, Derrik, goes a long way in explaining why this team feels the way that they feel. There's like a weird inconsistency to it, even though the numbers will tell you that they are very good in those specific areas.
I think bucketing it out that way does explain a lot because, like, when you have a quarterback like Jordan Love and even some of the skill players that they have, right? Like, we've seen Tucker Kraft make a lot of big catches down the field. I think Golden can separate down the field. Like, Romeo Doubs can do that at times. Like, they have these guys who can make the big plays, but the consistency is very frustrating. And I do think some of that is like Jordan Love, just accuracy wise. I think in the 1 to 10 yard area is not always the cleanest. That's why the offense is built to be like a shot play. We throw down the field, we play action, we throw 15-yard outbreakers type of offense. It's just that, again, kind of to your point, on 3rd and 4, you don't really need that. You need to throw the speed out and get that out a little bit faster, but that's just kind of not the way that the offense operates. And so I think if the run game were slightly more like powerful, I think that they would be a little bit better there. Like the run game isn't bad, but I think because they've been shuffling offensive linemen in and out, I think they've struggled to find probably the peak of the cohesion that they really want with that unit. And maybe that would help in their 3rd and 4 or their 3rd and short type of stuff. But I think that does a really good job of explaining why they're frustrating. I also think it's frustrating. Like, they're very obviously not a bad or even mediocre team, right? Like they're a good team. It's just, this was the year that they were supposed to be great. And then you look at every metric and they're like 6th or 7th or 8th. And they're like clearly in that, like, this is firmly a playoff team, but you still don't feel like they're the contender that you thought they would be.
I do also want to say, like, the Cardinals are not a bad football team.
No.
Like, they're frustrating. You see the stat that they've lost 5 in a row now, and it's by a grand total of 13 points.
They're a very competent team. They're capable of giving anybody they play a game. They're not getting steamrolled by anybody at this point.
I get mad when and y'all make valid points, but like, you look through Packers games and you're like, oh well, the run game couldn't get going. And like, it wasn't great today, but it was good enough. And Jordan Love plays well. And you're like, oh, well, where's the pass rush? Oh, Jacoby Brissett got sacked 6 times. The pass rush was there. They won the turnover battle. Like, they did all the stuff you're supposed to. They hit a huge kick at halftime to help them erase the 2 possession deficit going in. They did all the stuff that we say you're supposed to do to win football games. And I'm like, they did win, but I'm tired of this team stressing me out because everything about them suggests that they should be at the top of the heap.
The sequence in their first drive to me is just very emblematic of where this team is. They're on their opening drive. They have a 3rd and 4 from the Arizona 37. They do like a little reverse pivot handoff to Emmanuel Wilson that gets blown up because Rasheed Walker fails to get around the down block from Tucker Kraft, and the entire thing just explodes for a 1-yard loss. It's 4th and 5. They decide to go for it. And Love bombs it, throws it 40 yards into the end zone on 4th and 5, and airmails Romeo Doubs, and suddenly they don't have the ball anymore. And then there's a couple other like 3rd and mediums in this game. They had a 3rd and 7 while they were driving when they kicked a field goal in the second quarter. He tries to throw like a deep out to Dontavian Wicks on the right side, even though they're trying to work a high-low over the middle of the field, which it's like, you don't need it. They average 10.3 air yards per attempt on 3rd and medium and short. 10.3. It's just like, that's what this offense is. And sometimes the rewards are great. And then sometimes it's just like, why are we doing this? And then they had a 3rd and screen to Tucker Kraft that goes for like 15 yards, an easy conversion. They have a 4th and 2, little quick out, get the ball out of his hands quick to Matthew Golden. Like, I just think that there are these situations that should be a little bit easier that they make harder than they probably have to be. And then you combine that with some inconsistencies on 3rd down on the other side. They give up a couple explosives in this game. Like, there were 2 hole shots on a corner routes that the Cardinals hit where Evan Williams didn't get over far enough in cover 2. Jacoby Brissett makes both of those throws. And then the other guy on their defense that I think we might need to have a conversation about, like, I think that Carrington Valentine is probably a better outside corner in this moment than Nate Hobbs is. Nate Hobbs has been picked on a lot, where I think Valentine is actually a pretty decent player. And so the combination of those Evan Williams completions down the right sideline, a couple one-on-one moments where Marvin Harrison Jr. is picking on Nate Hobbs, combined with the 3rd down inconsistencies on the Packers, and the end result, you get a game that feels like this.
And you know what's really funny though? They do always make it more difficult on themselves than they need to, but they kind of win the game when on that like 4th and 3 or whatever it is, they have the trips to the left side, and Jordan Love throws like a 25-yard corner route to Tucker Kraft in the game. End the game. So it's like they keep doing it, and the gambit is that we will get it when we need it. And for the most part this year they have. And so they continue to be a frustrating team, and me especially having them in the wins pool I think has made them even more frustrating. But like, it still feels, even though it's slightly more up and down than I would like, I still feel like they're a really, really good football team. They're just like, I don't know. They're just kind of this way. I've said that before.
They're
but
annoying.
Like,
they're frustrating and annoying. What Dave said, I think, is correct. Like, how do you feel about the Packers right now? I'm annoyed by them, and I think that's the right place to land.
I'm annoyed, and I'm not going to alter any of my expectations just yet. Like, if this is the Packers being annoying, they got a long way to go to become a more well-rounded, consistent team. Again, like, if this is where you are after a strange up and down, frustrating stretch, then I think it's right that you're a pretty good team.
It's nice to see Micah have one of the best games of his career in terms of like sack totals and everything else. He was consistently disruptive, goes a long way in them winning this game. And so at least that part of it looks pretty good right now, even if some of the others are a little bit inconsistent. All right, let's get to some of the other performances that stuck out to us today. It is time for You Have My Attention.
Gentlemen, you have my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
We had a conversation on the preview show this week trying to figure out which was the second game of the week after Bucks Lions. You took the side of Colts Chargers, Dave.
Yes, I did.
Derrik took the side of Rams Jags. And in the end, neither was the second game of the week because they were both blowouts. The Chargers do a good job in the second half. You know, they threw the ball 1,000 times. They managed to crawl back into this thing. For the most part, these were one-sided games. And so I want to just ask a question about these two games overall before we dig into the specifics of it. Between the Rams and the Colts, in your mind, which team did a better job of destroying the legitimacy of their game of the week status?
Okay. I promise I'm not just being biased because I picked the Colts, but I'm going to go with the Colts because here's my hot take. Can I share my hot take with y'all?
You sure can.
I've been ruminating on the Rams-Jags game all day long because it was the first game of the day. The Rams and the Jags just played the same game that they've been playing all season long. The Rams just executed in the red zone and the Jags didn't get a takeaway. That's all that happened. That's all that happened in this game. The Jags didn't get a takeaway for the first time all year. They did all the same dumb shit that they usually do with operation problems, with too many penalties. They're averaging 9 flags a game on the year, dropped balls, inconsistent play from Trevor Lawrence. It was the same stuff they do all the time, except they couldn't convert in big situations. They didn't get a takeaway. And then the Rams just got Devontae Adams the ball in the end zone. Like that's all they did going into this game. First of all, this is the first time the Rams have ever been perfect in the red zone all year long. They were converting 50% in the red zone heading into this game, which was 24th in the league. They jumped up to 18th just by virtue of their performance in this one game. Devontae Adams came into the game with 13 red zone targets and 2 catches for 2 touchdowns. Today, he had 4 red zone targets, 3 catches, 3 touchdowns. Like, these are the teams we thought they were. The Rams just did that one frustrating thing well, and the Jags didn't do the turnover stuff that saved them from all the frustrating shit that they do. So I don't feel like I learned that much about either of these teams, which is a crazy thing to say about a game that the Rams won 35-7.
That's interesting. Derrik, do you think you learned anything about the Rams and the Jags today?
No, I think Dave is actually pretty spot on, and I would concede the game of the week. I really would. And this is the reason that I would say it. For the Colts versus the Chargers, I thought just another performance of the Colts offense doing what they do was incredible, especially against, I know that the Chargers defense, this was like a good matchup for the Colts to go exposed, but to kick their ass that way was incredible. But also, they had to outgun and outscore Justin Herbert playing the way that he was playing. And I know that there's some issues with that offense, but Justin Herbert was insane today. Like, if I collected the best 10 throws of the day, Herbert had 6 of them, and that is not an exaggeration. He was like truly a one-man show today. Like, he was phenomenal. And so to outgun him, I thought said something. Whereas with the Jaguars, I was just like, the Rams played a good game, and Dave makes the point. It's like they finally hit on them in the red zone, so it looks like a much better day than the Rams typically get. But he's right. They mostly played the game that they play on offense. Just the variance kind of swung their way when they needed it. The Jaguars shot themselves in the foot for this entire game. Like, their offense was disgusting to me. Like, they've had issues with drops, right? Especially over the middle. But like, Brian Thomas Jr. had a really bad drop over the middle. There was a corner route that was a little high down the left sideline that he had a shot at. He doesn't get he's not able to bring that down. There's a go ball down the right sideline to him where he slows down and tries to push off the DB, which I get, but it ends up to where looking like the ball is overthrown because he does that. There's a 3rd and 15 late in the game when the Jaguars are a little bit backed up, and like was probably their last chance to like really go make a push in this game. Parker Washington drops a dig route past the sticks. It's just like that happened even more than it's happened in other games. And then you combine that with like Trevor Lawrence there was a screen that he dirted, I think, in the first half. And then there was like just 1 or 2 other plays where his inconsistency piled up. And so you have him making those 2 or 3 plays on top of probably their worst performance in terms of drops and just not getting hands on the ball. Like this to me felt more like the Jaguars just lost the football game, where I felt like the Colts had to go make a statement.
But there's something right now about the Jags offense that just feels off, right? I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking in pointing that out. There was a 2-play stretch to me that like really explains where the Jaguars offense is right now, where it's a little bit of everything that's going wrong. So it's 3rd and 2 with 10 minutes and 44 seconds left in the third quarter. Trevor has Johnny Munt on the left side on 3rd and 2 from the Rams 30, and he just airmails it by like 5 yards, right? So that's just a miss, and that's going to happen. He's going to have like 2 or 3 of those a game at least. That's just kind of where we are with Trevor Lawrence. So that happens on 3rd and 2. And then on 4th and 2, he has De'Ami Brown coming over the middle of the field. He lets it rip right before De'Ami Brown turns his head around. And so it's not an inaccurate ball. It's just the timing on it is a tiny bit off on 4th and 2, and the Jags turn the ball over. So that's what the Jaguars offense is right now. Like, the quarterback is making his share of mistakes, and you're combining it with timing issues and detail issues, and it's a little bit of everything. And that's why it all starts to crumble. And that's kind of what this team has felt like over the last 2 weeks. When you have the sack-filled performance last week against the Seahawks, they take 7 sacks again today, and they're consistently struggling. It's not just one thing. It's a little bit of everything.
It is a little bit of everything. And even before that sequence that you were talking about, Johnny Munt had dropped a screen pass right before that, where he overthrows him on that 3rd and 2. And so it was a bunch of little stuff like that, where screens have typically been there, like, this is how we can get on track despite some of the other issues in our offense. And they haven't been able to lean on that. Like you said, they've been sacked now 7 times in each of their last 2 games against, obviously the Seahawks front is really, really good. And this Rams front is pretty good, but like 7 sacks is a lot, even to some of the best. And so I think some of them too are just, there was one where Quentin Lake fires as the nickel off the left side, and like Trevor sees it and he knows that he's hot. But with the way that the linebacker is kind of dropping under the seam route, and then you can see like the safety is flying over the top of it, there's no like short hot route for him. So in theory, like the best throw would be to maybe try to let that seam rip, but it's not really open. So like he doesn't have a good answer. Like it's just some of the little details, some of like how they're trying to pick this stuff up right now. It's not really working the way they want.
On the flip side, I'm starting to feel like who's going to like legitimately slow down the Colts. Like that's my big takeaway from watching them once again, where they are just, and we've talked about this a million times, but they're just so well balanced and well structured and amazing. I mean, it's hard to be too excited, like hyperbolic and excited about the Colts when you remember some of the aliens in the AFC. I mean, like the Chiefs, we're going to talk about the Chiefs. They look great. You can't write off the Bills offense, but like this offense is so damn impressive, and they're just a lock to score 27 plus points. I mean, that sequence in the second half of this game where the Chargers were clawing back into it and their offense was getting going, and every single time the Colts just put the kibosh on it.
That was my favorite part of the whole game, is when the Chargers scored to make it 31-17 and the Colts got the ball back. And then that sequence of plays right after that, they have like a play action insert with Alec Pierce, and it yanks the corner from that side as he's like running a little crosser. They find Warren in the flat for 29 yards. Next play, they rip a wrapper out to Michael Pittman for 11. And then the next play after that, Pierce snaps off a little comeback off of a 2-man play action for 14 yards. And the next play after that, it's a 19-yard touchdown to Jonathan Taylor. And it's just like, okay.
And
that's where this team is right now. It's like the Chargers score to make it feel like, all right, maybe they're getting back into this thing. And then the Colts squash it immediately, because that's just what their offense feels like at this stage.
And that Jonathan Taylor touchdown run was so beautiful, dude. Just the way that like Bernard Raymond is climbing to the second level and just like swim moving the D tackle, guys crashing over from the other side to take him out of the play. Everybody's walling off their man. And then Jonathan Taylor, on top of the blocking being incredible, Jonathan Taylor has the speed to outrun 3 different guys to the goal line. That's just it. They, like I said, they're so balanced. They can be so explosive. I think I'll say it more succinctly than I tried to a minute ago. Other than the fact that a few other teams in the AFC just have these superhero quarterbacks who can will their teams to wins, I do think this is the most complete team in the AFC.
I mean, I think top to bottom, like the 10 other players on the offense, like I think it's undeniable. I think they're the best team by far.
They feel like an NFC roster.
The only reason I'm not just cannonballing in and saying like the Colts are the best team in the AFC, maybe the best team in the league, is just because of the respect that I have for guys like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and things like that. We've
seen Daniel Jones do it at this level for now 7 weeks, and they've been allowed to, we've talked about this a lot, similar to like the Seahawks, they've been allowed to play the game they've wanted to play, right? It's 45% play action. Like they're able to run the ball. They have leads in a lot of these games. And eventually you're going to have to play left-handed. I'll be curious to see what it looks like when that happens. But their offense has been fantastic. I was looking up some of the stats from today, and it was so beautiful. So they averaged 7 yards per play again. They had a 58% rushing success rate. They had a 53% dropback success rate. They had a 50% success rate from 11 personnel. They had a 67% success rate from 12 personnel. They had 147 passing yards off of play action. They had 141 passing yards without play action. Like there's just this balance where they're hitting you in all these different ways. And we talked a lot about the pass catchers last week on that show. And I did a video about it this week on our YouTube channel. Like, I'm obsessed with this pass catching group. Today, going back and watching it, you're just struck by the way that the offensive line is playing right now and the way that Jonathan Taylor is playing right now. The first Jonathan Taylor touchdown, and you combine all of this, by the way, with Shane Steichen is on a heater, like just on an absolute heater. And you could feel it in this game. So the touchdown that Jonathan Taylor scores on the first drive, they have a jet motion to the left and it yanks the linebackers over one gap. And then they run a little split zone where they have the tight end slicing across, and that holds the backside linebacker. So you're moving the linebackers over and you're holding one. And then you watch the blocking on that play. Nelson just does a ridiculous job reaching the backside defensive tackle. And then you watch Bordolini. He does a phenomenal job, like climbing off of the combo with the right tackle. And because the linebacker he's supposed to climb to isn't there, he just climbs to the nickel on the play side, hip checks him out of the way, and it's a touchdown. Like every single one of these guys up front, Derrik, is just doing such a great job. There was the 3rd and 13 or the 3rd and 3 run where they give it to Abdullah for 13 yards. That's another moment where it's like, it's a great play call. It's a play call or it's a great feel for the situation. And because the Chargers are in a pass rush look on that play, like Deion Henley's mugged up, but then he drops out. And so Quentin Nelson has to like climb up to him while Bernard Raymond has to do like a weird thing with a spiking defensive lineman, but they're getting hands on everybody. Like it's all working. Every single aspect of it is working together. And it's just really cool when you see a team in this sort of groove offensively.
That play exactly is why you want a good run game, where like when teams are trying to get into their, I'm going to be getting a pass rush front and I'm going to do something fun. You just run right through them. Like, who cares? I don't need to see your pass rush stuff. We're just going to run right through you. So I think the blocking has been phenomenal. Like, I think every player right now on that line is playing up to their best of their abilities, which has been really fun to see. The thing to me that is like striking about Taylor, and I think you really saw it in this game, when he starts to get to the second level, that like area of 5 yards past the line to like 10 yards past the line, him like turning over a gear in that moment is unbelievable. Like Derwin James was flabbergasted that he hit the gear that he hit. I think on that first touchdown run. So like,
yeah, because Derwin was the deep safety and he's the one that took the bad angle. This wasn't like RJ Mickens from the Dolphins game.
That's the thing. If it was any of the other guys, I'd be like, he's Jonathan Taylor and you're not. Like, that's going to happen. But for it to happen to Derwin James, I was like, okay, he is truly playing on just, I mean, he's the best back in the league right now, at least the best performing back. And so I think player-wise, they've been insane. You mentioned some of the design stuff that they're doing. I really like that. I think it was maybe later in the third quarter where Jonathan Taylor gets the like jet touchdown where he's off to the left side and they like jet him across. It's fun because you also see Tyler Warren like come across behind him as if they might shovel it to him. So this is clearly like something that they're probably going to build on with their red zone package. Like Shane Steichen is finding every single way to utilize every player in every way that he can and grow on the stuff that they've done last year. Obviously, you've highlighted that with Pierce becoming like a dig route connoisseur now, but like he's doing something like that with all of these players. And it's an incredibly fun unit to watch. And like the Daniel Jones of it all, Bryce Rossell actually did a really good point of this on the Sports Info Solution podcast, talking about like in terms of pressure to sack, Daniel Jones is doing something he's never done in his career where like he's just not taking sacks on pressures in a way that, again, that he's never done before. So that will probably regress. In my mind, though, the accuracy, I don't think that's going anywhere. Like he is putting the ball on everybody right now, like into tight windows. When he needs to layer it, it's really good. Like he's leading these guys for yards after the catch. Like the ball placement to me is what's really stirring the drink right now with that passing offense.
And he was pressured at the 7th highest rate in the league for week 7. I mean, there's still 2 games to play, but so it's not as if the Chargers weren't affecting him. I think that's something I think is worth highlighting is, I mean, the Indy's offensive line is playing amazing, but it's not as if he's always drinking a cup of coffee back there, just having all the time in the world to make the right decision. Like he's playing well under pressure. He's done it multiple times this season.
I mean, that touchdown to Tyler Warren, Derwin's in his face. Derwin is like right in his face, and he just makes that throw like standing in against pressure. He's been doing that all year. It's been very impressive. The last thing I want to mention about these 2 games is I think what the Rams did on offense today deserves a lot of credit, because I think what they felt like might have been the same as it normally has this season. The fact that they used the most 13 personnel of like at some point during the game, they had been using it at the highest rate in the next gen era. This is a team that we know lives in 11 personnel. And I thought it was such a cool wrinkle because you don't have Puka. And so I think you're doing this for 2 different reasons. You're doing it because you don't have your best offensive player who you build a lot of things through. And so if we're not going to have him, why do we want to put more receivers on the field when we have these tight ends that we actually kind of like? And so it was a good wrinkle dealing with his absence. And then you think about it, Derrik, the Jags struggled so much against the base defense looks that they were forced into by the Seahawks last week. And so I guarantee you that's Sean McVay looking at what the Seahawks did last week and saying, all right, 13 is the way we can guarantee we get them into base defense. Why don't we try to push this button more than we ever have? And so I thought that was just like a really cool idea when you're trying to account for not having Puka. And the other guy that just leapt off the screen to me today for the Rams, you mentioned him on that sack, Derrik. Quentin Lake had an insane game for the Rams. He had 2 PBUs, including like one at the line of scrimmage, one on third down against Travis Hunter. He had that sack that you mentioned before. He had another play where he rips off the edge and disrupts a drop back as a blitzer. Multiple different plays in this game. He's in the slot. I'm watching the dots as the game is going. He's carrying these vertical routes that, you know, that's where the Jags are trying to go with the ball. And so that's not going to show up in the stat sheet, but he has really become like a cool skeleton key for this defense. They've got some issues at outside corner, but what he is in terms of like the long-term outlook for this thing, but what he's doing in the nickel has been absolutely phenomenal.
He's been really cool, man. Like I think he's really leveled up. Like when I came into the season worried about the cornerback room, I was probably less worried about him than the outside corners, obviously, but I was still like, you know, he's flashed some stuff, but like if they really wanted to, they could probably upgrade, but he has been the upgrade. And he's like, I think body type wise, when you can get some of these bigger guys the way that he's built, I think that that's honestly the best way to do it, especially if they're going to be kind of what they are in terms of weird stuff at linebacker and kind of like skimping there, for to have a player who can like kind of fill in that role when he needs to as like a blitzer, run defender, that sort of stuff, I think is incredibly valuable. Back to the other side with the 13 personnel stuff, we finally got the Terrence Ferguson game, which I obviously have to bring up. And the reason the reason I do think that's important, I think other than Tutu Atwell, the vertical element of this offense can be lacking at times. Terrence Ferguson, especially compared to the other tight ends they have, like his whole thing is he can just fly down the seam, and like they literally hit him on a big touchdown doing that today. And so I think, again, maybe you're not going to do that every single week, but like the fact that, again, with their best offensive player out, they lean to this rookie who really up until last week, they weren't even really putting in the lineup. And all of a sudden now he's like, we're going to throw a shot play to this guy and score on it. Like, it's just, I said coming into the week, I love to see what Sean McVay does when he's backed into a corner. And this is what we got. And it was beautiful.
We huddle 5 times a day throughout the day to talk about what we like and what we want to highlight. And Beller helps us get all these wonderful highlights together. And every time we did it, Robert was like, Quentin, we got the Quentin Lake plays. So do we have, but we're going to highlight Quentin Lake. Right. And that's one thing, but on top of that, it was the 8:30 a.m. kickoff. So he made the first and biggest impression.
Yeah, he certainly did. That was one of the things that just jumped out to me watching football today. It was just Quentin Lake had one hell of a day. So the Rams and the Colts both had our attention. The Philadelphia Eagles passing game, let's throw that on the heap as well. 19 of 23 for Jalen Hurts, 326 yards. The Eagles' best day through the air in a very long time in a 28-22 win over the Vikings. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles' air attack, you guys have our attention.
They would have had our attention either way, right? Because like if they can't get it going once again,
in a bad way, they would have. We got
a 5-alarm fire on our hands, but instead they do what they're supposed to do. You want to talk about frustrating teams? I mean, the potential's been there this entire time, right? I mean, we know these guys, and it's shown up at times throughout the season. Like we saw a lot of this same stuff against the Rams a few weeks ago, and they just did it very consistently throughout the game. And it was nice to see, as somebody who has thought the Eagles would be more explosive throughout the season. I didn't need the reminder that they have 2 of the best receivers in the NFL, but I got it anyway.
It was interesting watching this game unfold because, again, they had a half where they did absolutely nothing. I mean, they struggled offensively in the first half. They had a 30% offensive success rate in the first half. They took sacks in the final 2 drives of that half. They had 2 passing first downs in the first half and ended with 320 passing yards. And Derrik, even watching it in the second half, I think Jalen Hurts made a handful of just crazy impressive plays in the second half. Pushing the ball down the field accurately, we know he can do that. He had multiple plays where he's creating outside of the pocket. I mean, that 3rd and 15 completion he has to Devontae Smith, it's really good in the third quarter. It's really good pocket navigation for him. And a great job by the left side of the offensive line, kind of clearing out the pocket late, both Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata on that left side. And he kind of makes a play later in the down. And then on that 3rd and 13, again, he's creating outside of the pocket, the offensive line, including, I think Brett Toth had a really nice play on that, where he's just clearing out that side. Lane Johnson stands up. Dallas Turner gives him a little bit of space. And so I thought he did a great job extending plays where he needed to extend. And then he had a couple deep shots, the Devontae Smith touchdown, the sluggo to A.J. Brown to win the game. That A.J. Brown touchdown, that double post was a gorgeous on-time throw. But I still think watching this back, even though the stats are kind of overwhelming, a lot of this stuff is coming off schedule and outside of like the normal rhythm of the play, outside of like the Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown touchdowns and then the sluggo. So I think that it was a really good individual performance by Jalen Hurts in the second half, but I'm not sure the cracks in the Eagles passing game disappear because of what they did today against the Vikings in the final 2 quarters.
I'm like kind of two minds about it. I think on one hand, I kind of agree because like their drop back passing game against non-blitzes still worries me. Like they were good against the blitz today, and they were even still good against the non-blitz today. But again, part of that was either off script stuff, which that is again the frustration with Jalen Hurts is like he's clearly capable of making these plays. And like the 2 on either sideline that he makes in this game were like really important 3rd and long conversions that maybe they don't win this game if he doesn't make those plays. And so I thought that those were really impressive from him. And then I think what really stuck out to me that they like really don't do as part of their DNA is some of Jalen Hurts' biggest throws in this game were under center play action, which they do not do. Like it is not ever in their playbook. Like I think
they had 2 completions on those plays all season before today. They had 4 of them today.
And they were all checkdowns like previously. Like they were just check. He was like, they would call those plays and then he would check them down. He wasn't actually throwing the deep post route or whatever. So he obviously hits the one to Devonta Smith that goes for a touchdown. But there was even a later chunk play, not a touchdown, that he hits where he slides a little bit to his left in his pocket and comes back to the late dig window that Smith had run from the left over to the right hash. And he hits him on that. And it's like, if we could just, again, do this twice or 3 times a game, whereas like, when this offense is at their worst, that it's at 0, like that to me is how they start to get back on track a little bit. So I at least thought them trying to dig into some other stuff that they don't typically go to, I thought was pretty encouraging. And then I will say, like you mentioned, the double post touchdown that he throws to A.J. Brown, which came directly after the Devonta Smith chunk that I just mentioned. That throw is incredible. That might be really good throw. Yeah, that might be my favorite throw that he's made all season, where they're running that double post and it's against single high. And so the inside post is holding that safety just enough. And he's like, all right, I know my guy can make it. And he just pins it on him into a tight window. Like those are the throws when I've been like frustrated about like, okay, Jalen Hurts can be productive, but does he make the throws that I like to see from a Dak Prescott, a Justin Herbert, like Matthew Stafford? It's that throw. And he's done it a couple of times this year. And so to do that on top of some of the under center, we can take our shots here. Like it just gives the offense a little bit more fullness that it just typically has not had this year.
I really love this because we're not asking for a ton in terms of like giving them structural advantages. Just do a little bit, right? Give them 3, 4, 5 plays a game where, because it's heavy personnel under center play action, you're making things a little bit easier on your players. If you do that, right, you give them a handful of completions, they're going to have those "we're just better than you" moments every single week. And so the combination of those 2 things in the second half was enough for them to feel the way that they did.
It is.
And that's the first A.J. Brown touchdown is just, I'm better than you. Like he barely ran a route on that play. He's just like jostling with the safety. He's just like fighting with the safety for 3 seconds. And he's like, I'm just going to run fast. And then he throws it and he makes it. It's just ridiculous.
I was just going to say, like, they've gotten to this point mainly relying on "we're better than you." And like, that's always been my bet on the Eagles, is that they have that caliber of roster that they can beat 5-2, just rolling the ball out there. But imagine a world where they're scheming up easy looks for guys and making life easier on everybody, in addition to just being better. That would be fun. Maybe this is the start of that.
The number that really jumped out to me that I think the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for how the second half of that game went. 3.7 seconds average time to throw on Jalen Hurts' completions in the second half. So even if there was like some initial pushing of the pocket, like there was a couple plays where Landon Dickerson like gave up a little bit of ground, but the way that they kept guys in front of them and then cleared out the pocket late allowed him to kind of extend some of those plays and find guys late in the down. And so this was not just a Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown situation. The guys up front did a lot of work to make that possible in the second half of this game.
3.05 seconds in time to pressure as well, which is top 5 for the league. Yeah, nice to have Landon Dickerson back.
Yes, and it goes a long way.
Yeah.
And the Vikings consciously in this game were loading up the box pretty consistently. And so not surprised that the run game wasn't really clicking, but you're going to have opportunities in the passing game if a team does that against you. And that's how you need to go about this. And so, this is a game where I think it was closer than, there were a couple moments in this game where like the Brendel holding call that wipes off a touchdown, like that was ridiculous. That's not a hold. It's like a snatch that should have counted. The TJ Hawkinson one where he probably catches that ball, that one's a little bit less impactful because I think even if they had scored a touchdown on that play, they still would have needed to score again. But the Brendel one that wipes off that touchdown to Jalen Naylor, like that should not have been a penalty.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we just gave Jalen plenty of flowers, but like the Eagles avoided something that's plagued them all year. I mean, remember what? It was 3rd and 9 with 1:45 to play when he hits that sluggo to AJ Brown. And you had every reason to think they don't get that because they haven't been converting those sorts of situations for most of the year. And if they have to punt, all bets are off and maybe you lose to Carson Wentz, but they made a great play.
All right, let's get to the stuff that maybe wasn't as impressive in week 7. It's time for What the Fuck.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What?
The Washington Commanders lose a game 44-22 to the Dallas Cowboys today. Jaden Daniels gets hurt again. The Commanders are now 3-4. This WTF moment is about more than what the Commanders did on the field today. This is more about what this loss potentially means for the Commanders season. Their schedule over the next few weeks is absolutely brutal. You know it off the top of your head. Who do the Commanders have over the next 3 weeks?
Chiefs on Monday night next week, followed by the Seahawks, I believe, then the Lions.
Okay, so there's like a real chance that this team is either like 3-7 or 4-6 after the next 3 weeks. And after losing today, they have put themselves pretty far behind the 8 ball when it comes to making the playoffs. So not only what they did on Sunday, but what this means for the rest of the Commanders season. What the
We laid this out pretty perfectly in the preview episode.
I know.
Where some wonky shit happens against the Bears and you're coming into this game really needing to win to keep pace. You obviously don't do that. It's a little, I don't know. It's tough for me at least to like evaluate how I even thought about how they played because Jaden Daniels goes out. I mean,
they were struggling before he got hurt.
They absolutely were, but we also know this Cowboys defense will let you make some big plays, and it was obviously you don't have Terry McLaurin or Deebo Samuel. I think that was going to be tough. I think the Cowboys have a good shot to win no matter what, but the game, the competitive portion of it ends for all intents and purposes when Jaden goes out and Marcus Mariota very quickly throws a pick 6 that just makes this a laugher very quickly. So I don't have a good feel for where the Commanders are as a team when Jaden's healthy, and now you're 3-4. I think the report I heard after the game was that it's not considered serious, but that's something to keep an eye on. And yeah, man, this schedule is absolutely brutal. Like you're at a point now, and then after those 3 games, you have the Dolphins, which okay, whatever. But then it's Denver right after that. I mean, you are going to have to play some of your best football of the year to stay even like in the hunt, like to even be on the graphic of teams that are part of the seeding. And we said it. I mean, this is what regression can look like, where all of a sudden nothing totally catastrophic has happened, but you lose Jaden for 2 weeks. You lose to the Falcons in part because you don't have your guy. You let one slip that you had no business letting slip. I'm sorry to my Bears fans, but at least in the eyes of the Commanders, that's how they view it. And now you lose Jaden again. And I mean, they got to go to Arrowhead and win, or else they're 3-5. That's not a fun place to be.
It's funny because we were talking about them this week and why I thought, I feel pretty good about where this team is because the offense, when Jaden Daniels had been playing, had still looked really good down to down, right? Like this was a consistent group. They were a reliable group. They were running the ball well. And Derrik, they just didn't look like that today, even before he got hurt. The run game wasn't like a machine on early downs the way that it had been for a good chunk of the season. I thought the Cowboys did a good job of like mixing up their fronts. They were doing a lot of stunting, a lot of like rundown games and getting a lot of penetration on those plays. I mean, I think 21% of Washington's runs in this game went for negative yardage or no gain, which for a team that had been so consistent on the ground for most of the season, even going back to last season, I think that says a lot about the Cowboys' game plan. And I think that there were just inconsistencies in them throwing the ball in this game. It was a little bit of everything. So the Cowboys played 42% man coverage in this game. They had not played more than 11% in any single game all season. And so clearly coming into this game against a Washington team that didn't have Terry McLaurin, that didn't have Deebo Samuel, they're like, we're going to challenge these receivers. Jaden finished 3 of 10 for 39 yards against man coverage. That's not all on him. There were a couple drops against man. Zach Ertz had a bad one. I believe Jalen Lane had one at one point. But then Jaden also missed a couple throws in this game. Like he sails one for Zach Ertz at one point. He leaves one high and outside for Robbie Chosen coming over the middle of the field on what would have been a third down conversion. And so when I'm trying to pin down like why they struggled, it wasn't just that they were missing guys in the passing game. That was part of it. And it's why Dallas felt so comfortable playing man coverage. But Jaden missed like 3 or 4 throws in this game that you would typically think he hits. So this is not just our guys were hurt thing. There were opportunities there to be made that he wasn't able to make today. And so it just wasn't the type of performance I'm used to seeing when he's on the field for this Washington offense, no matter who's playing receiver.
And honestly, I actually think that that's kind of been my issue with him all season. Like, I think you still get really good plays, obviously, outside of the pocket. He made a number of really good throws on the move in this game. In the red zone, he's been really lethal. But I have felt like 3 or 4 times a game, he's just missing throws in a way that he didn't last year, whether it's like sometimes it's outright missing, which usually is not his issue. But I just feel like it's been a little bit more of like, he made his guy go up above the rim when he didn't really need to there. Or, oh, that ball is in the dirt when he's not really protecting it from anything. He just kind of missed. And so it's caught, but it's a little bit more of a difficult catch to make. I feel like we've gotten more of that last year, where last year the ball placement was his superpower, right? And this year it just feels a little bit more normal, which I think is why the down-to-down passing offense has felt, to me, a little bit more herky-jerky. And again, that's also partly because he's been in and out of the lineup. So he's just not as comfortable as I think that he wants to be. So I think you add all of that on top of, again, you're missing a couple of guys at receiver. And then I'm so glad you pointed out the Dallas front. Like, that to me is probably the most impressive game that they've played all season. Like,
by far.
Yeah, like just by far. Like, they were actually getting into the backfield. Like, even Kenneth Murray, I thought, got into the backfield a number of times and made a couple of good plays. Like, that front played Washington's offensive line about as well as anyone since probably Green Bay has this season.
I understand what you're saying about the misses. I think that let me bucket them in 2 different places. He had one early in the game where the Cowboys are playing man. It's a crosser to Luke McCaffrey, and he misses it just a little bit outside. Those are the throws and the manner in which he's missed a couple of throws this year. We talked about early in the season, Derrik, where there was a couple of those crossers against man where he's just like a hair off. That is what's been happening. But the one he misses to like Ertz Ertz it's a 2nd and 9 in the first quarter. It's a clean pocket. Ertz is sitting there in the middle of the field, and he threw it 5 feet over his head. And then the one he missed the lane on the outbreaker on the right side, that's another one where it's just like that ball wasn't even close. And so I think that there have been like some details like where he's just a tiny bit off in tight windows this year, but some of the misses he had in this game were pretty uncharacteristic. And that's why I feel like it was just a different feel to the performance we got from him than even some of his imperfect moments from earlier this season.
I actually think that's a really good way to point it out. Like, I think even going back to last year and then certainly early this year, sometimes when he just needs to lay the ball out on a crosser and let a guy run to it, the accuracy can be a little bit up and down. And again, that was even true when he was really good last year, I think. But throwing like to a spot in a zone, he was money like all of last year. And like that was supposed to be his superpower. But you make the point of like this year, he's just had a couple of those where I don't know if it's because he's a little bit more unhealthy, especially now, obviously, that he has been in and out of the lineup, or what it is, or just random variance. You know, sometimes quarterbacks just go through patches where they're just not as accurate as they used to be. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's 1 or 2 more throws into those tight window spots that last year he just like, it kind of felt automatic at a certain point.
Talk about regression. I think this is, to me, like a really good example of it. Obviously, they're 8-4 in 1-score games last year. They're 0-2 in 1-score games this year. This wasn't a 1-score game. But the other area we talked about all offseason was what they did on 4th down. They converted 87% of their 4th down attempts last year. Today, it wasn't the fourth downs they didn't get. It was the fourth downs they didn't have a chance to go for, right? So there were two moments in this game where they have fourth and pretty short, fourth and 2, 4th and 3. They get 2 false starts on those moments where they were going to go for it, and then they have to punt on those plays. And those are just the little tiny details, the little tiny moments that you go from being a team that's lucky a lot and you get a lot of breaks to a team that doesn't feel like it's getting quite as many.
It didn't wind up mattering, but they miss a 2-point conversion early as well because Zach Ertz comes off his block like half a tick too soon. Which, yeah, like I said, when you wind up losing by whatever it was, 22 points, that doesn't loom quite as large. But yeah, I mean, they were so good at that type of stuff last season.
Last thing I want to talk about before we move on. We just heaped a lot of praise onto the Indianapolis Colts at the beginning of this show. The Washington Commanders are currently at the table of our 10 teams. The Washington Commanders are 3-4 with a brutal stretch coming up over the next 3 weeks. The Colts are 6-1 and look like one of the best teams in the NFL and are absolutely rolling. Is it time to take Washington off the table and put the Colts at the table?
Here's the thing. 2 things can be true. The Colts deserve a seat at the table based on what they've done. And I hope anybody listening to this, I hope I've been sufficiently impressed with their resume to this point. I hesitate to take Washington off the table, considering some of the elements surrounding their start. I mean, they didn't have Jaden Daniels for a game. He's been in and out of the lineup. And I hear what y'all are saying about his accuracy. I do want to throw in there, if it's excuse making, so be it. But not having the top 2 options in a receiver core that we all agreed is not good enough and wasn't good enough when it was healthy.
But that's what I was trying to extricate that. Like, it doesn't matter who the guys are if they're open and you're not throwing them the ball. And that was happening today.
I don't completely agree because it's the guys that you have the most time on task with and also just the best possible players. Like, I get your point. Like, you sail a throw no matter what. But I think you could have overall, over the full body of work, better results with a Terry McLaurin and a Deebo Samuel. My point being, this offense it's been banged up in important spots, and I would argue we haven't really seen what it was supposed to be for the vast majority of this season, and they look like they're in deep shit.
But even if that's fair, like I'm not admonishing them for what they've been up to this point. I'm just saying they're 3-4 with the Chiefs, Seahawks, and Lions looming here. There are 12 teams in the NFC right now that have a better record than the Washington Commanders.
So your point is that in 3 weeks, the Commanders might be 3-6 or 3-7, whatever it is.
Right now, who is more deserving to be at the table? Is it the Colts or the Commanders?
Colts by far.
It's the Colts by far.
It is the Colts, but here's the problem. If we take the Commanders off, then they're done. That's this
I'm not afraid of that. I'm a little afraid of that. There is a reason we're not taking the Ravens off. It's very easy right now. After the Steelers lost to the Bengals on Thursday, that to me is an easy, we're saving the Ravens, right? They could win the AFC North still, considering the state of the AFC North after Lamar comes back. So that's why they're not in this part of this conversation. Washington is 3-4 in a loaded NFC with a brutal 3-game stretch coming up. At what point are we going to feel comfortable putting the Colts in this conversation? They're one of the best teams in the league.
I mean, I'm very comfortable it's not about my comfort level with the Colts. It's my discomfort level taking a team off.
I just don't think Washington's top gear is good enough in the current NFC for me to be afraid to take them off the table right now. What do you think, Derrik?
That's probably fair.
So I think the only reason I am now kind of considering we can put the Colts in is that of the 10 teams that we have, and this I think is the nature of the quarterbacks that play in these conferences, we have 7 NFC teams and we have 3 AFC teams, which it's all the superhero quarterbacks, and then in the NFC you have whatever is in the NFC. But even with the superhero quarterbacks in the AFC, it feels a little bit weird because the Ravens probably are not that caliber of team. And so by virtue of the way that we set up the table is like we're kind of just saying you're the Chiefs or the Bills or like get out of town in the AFC. And I feel like the Colts are at least a little bit more deserving than that.
Justice for the Colts, fair representation across the AFC.
Not where I thought I would land, by the way.
It's
Like
not-
at this
look-
point in the season, I just did not think that's where.
So what's your vote?
If we're voting right now, I would probably put the Colts in.
It's not, my issue is not with the Colts. My issue is with the idea of Jaden Daniels leading a second half surge. But it sounds like I'm outnumbered here. So I'm fine just stating my piece. And then really my favorite thing in the world is just to remind people that I told you so later. So like I can't lose here because I do like the Colts.
I just think it's ridiculous at this point to not have the Colts on. And the only reason that we're not kicking the Ravens off is because they play in the AFC North.
Mhm.
Like that's the only reason.
Yeah.
And
I-
I just think like the NFC is too loaded. I feel like to
That's
leave
where-
room
that's
for
where
a
I
team
sit
like
with
this.
this.
I think that's where I'm at now. It's like I just look at the other teams that we have, and it's like they would have to beat like 3 of these teams realistically to like
They
get where
played
they
the
want to go.
Eagles twice in the back half of the season.
Well, I
They
mean, like
played-
even in the event that they get to the playoffs, they would still have to beat like 3 of these teams to get where they want to go.
It's funny because I didn't pick the Commanders to make the playoffs coming into the season. I was right there with Derrik all summer saying that they're a prime candidate for regression. And that's exactly what has happened to them to this point. But the idea that we can't go back on this just freaks me out a little bit. Jaden Daniels is really good. At least I still think so. But
have some courage. The Colts deserve to be at the table.
what I was about to say is that there's not enough on this roster elsewhere that makes me feel okay. Like, I mean, like a bet on the Commanders is a bet that Jaden Daniels is just going to go supernova. And even if he does, they still might not have enough. I mean, again, like Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, that was part of the thing with the Commanders maybe regressing too, is like you're counting on 30-year-old receivers to stay healthy and productive.
One of whom came into the season banged up.
Marshawn Lattimore had a very forgettable day against these Dallas receivers. So I don't feel good about it, but I'm all right. I will go along with this.
All right. So the Colts are now at the table. It's about time. They deserve to be here.
It's not about the Colts. The Colts deserve the place. The Colts deserve the seat. I'm just a coward.
All right. We have 2 more WTF moments from week 7. We don't have to spend a ton of time on these, but they absolutely have to be mentioned. The Miami Dolphins have hit rock bottom. A 31-6 loss to the Cleveland Browns. I mean, we thought this game would be pretty unwatchable. Here's a number I have for you. Okay. The Browns had a 28% success rate today and averaged 3.9 yards per play, and they won the game 31-6.
I'm kind of pissed off at the Dolphins because everything was there for this to be a hilariously memorable, like 10-9, 13
They could not
10.
come through for you.
They couldn't come
They
through.
had to fumble a kickoff. They had to give up a pick 6.
This
wasn't
like,
happening.
You had to shift your attention away from this to focus on stuff that was more important because the Dolphins no-showed that badly in a game where everything was set up for it to be a hilarious sort of nail biter, and it just wasn't.
I don't know what else there is to say about this team. I mean, I think the only question that remains now is like, do we think Mike McDaniel gets fired anytime soon? Or are they in a place which some of the reports have said where they actually like the head coach? They think there are just some other issues at play. Something's got to give. Like at a certain point, someone's got to, they have to play a different quarterback or someone has to get fired at the end of the season. Like, I don't really understand how you can just keep going with the status quo when this stuff continues to happen.
I like Mike McDaniel. I think he can still be a very good coach, not even just as a play caller, but I think that he could have a new opportunity in 2 years and make this all work out, and he could be good there. For as many moments for them to have, like with all the locker room stuff being kind of public, that just to me feels like whatever is at the top kind of just needs to go. And I think at this point, it probably includes the head coach and the quarterback. Like quarterback has just not been playing well. He didn't play well enough last year, has not played well enough this year. And then I think some of that, whether fair or not, I think probably falls with McDaniel as well, because they very clearly have built this offense through the vision of like, I can make this work with Tua Tagovailoa and the way that the offense has to work around him. And we have evidence now at this stage in the season that like, that's just not going to cut it at this stage. So I think McDaniel will work out at whatever the next stop is, but I feel like we're probably at the point where he's not going to make it to, I would even guess, Halloween. Tua
has thrown 6 interceptions in his last 2 games. And ironically, the pick 6 is a tipped ball. I don't put that on Tua, but his other 2 because he threw 3 in this game were just egregious. I mean, the last one particularly where you're just staring down the safety in like a static cover 3 defense. Like there's no disguise. There's nothing crazy happening. He just ripped it anyway and predictably was very wrong. And then Mike McDaniel after the game, don't know for sure that he is talking about Tua, but he had the quote that's going around where he said, if you're negatively affecting the football team routinely, I don't have a choice but to assess a different player.
My biggest question now, I think the coach gets fired. If not now, then soon.
Eventually. I just don't know when.
The quarterback of the team next year, is he on the roster next year? I mean, the contract is onerous. And so they would have to like do the Russell Wilson thing. If my numbers are right, I'm looking at over the cap right now. If they make him a post June 1st cut next year, he has a $67 million cap hit. And if they also cut Tyreek Hill, they would be under the cap. Like they could field the team while doing that in the same way we saw the Broncos do. And it kind of feels like we might be trending in that direction.
Which I think is fine, though, because I think we kind of, well, not fine. Obviously, that's terrible. But we kind of came into the year knowing, like, with the way that the roster is constructed and where the money is, like, you either make it work this year or we're just going to blow it up. Yeah, or it's over. And so, like, if it's going to be over, sure, eating that much money for a year or two is going to not be enjoyable. But, like, you're kind of at the stage where it just feels like you have no other option than to move on, just wipe the slate clean and try again.
The Dolphins were at the end, right? We knew that. In one way or the other, they were coming to the end. We're getting to the end of the road with this construction of the Dolphins. That was not the case with the Raiders coming into this season. The Raiders were supposed to have a little bit of hope, supposed to be a new era with Pete Carroll. There was supposed to be a certain level of competency to this team. Instead, they have one of the most embarrassing offensive performances in recent memory. They had the ball for 18 minutes, 17 minutes, 52 seconds. They ran 30 plays, and they finished this game with a 16.7% success rate. I don't know what there is to say about all of that. Like, I don't even know what you say about this sort of performance and how quickly this has gotten this rotten for a team in year one under a new regime.
We said it in the preview episodes that everything the Raiders were doing seemed to indicate a certain floor. And like, even if you weren't buying that this would be a good team right away, they wouldn't be the sort of atrocious situation that we're doing what the fuck segments on. And here we are. I mean, it defies explanation. 30 snaps of offense is the second fewest since 1999 and one of the third fewest snap counts since 1978 per Aaron Schatz. That's
Barnwell tweeted this today. The 1999 one, the Browns had fewer snaps in 1999, the first game of the season. It was their first game as the Browns.
Their first game as a team? Yeah.
Oh,
that's the realm that the Raiders today were in.
So that's expansion team is a very good note. So the way that I'm going to try to paint how bad this was by the numbers, since 2000, we have played just over 13,000 football games. In this game, the Raiders had 5.6 yards per drive, which is the 12th lowest mark of that entire span. 13,000 games, and this was the 12th lowest.
I wish I knew what the other ones were.
I can't believe it's 12.
Well,
I can't believe it's not top 5.
The bottom 2 are the Browns. I forget which years exactly. And then the team that has the most occurrences inside that top 12 are the Houston Texans, and 2 of them were in that expansion era in those first couple of years when they were just like not a serious football team.
So the 2025 Raiders are playing like a team that didn't exist last year, a franchise that didn't exist
Today
last
was
year.
Disgusting. I mean, like when you watch what they were even trying to do in the passing game, it's all stuff that's horizontal behind the line of scrimmage. And then watching their offensive line right now is just, there were a couple of reps from Jackson Powers Johnson against Chris Jones in this game where, like, I understand that you're outmanned in those situations. Like, there were moments where it's like, I can't believe that's an NFL player, right? And like how he was handling that. And DJ Glaze had a couple of those as well. And that, I think, is where a lot of this starts, right? Like, there was, whenever you have, and we talked about this all offseason, like whenever you have a new regime with a new coaching staff, there's so much unknown about which way things are going to go. Right? Like, are you going to take the personnel that you have and are we going to get the best versions of those guys? Like, I think about Washington last year and just, you look at Washington's team on paper, especially the offensive line. It's like, this is not a good group. Like, but what they did on that staff was phenomenal. Like they just were able to paper over so much of it. Guys showed real growth. It was just, that's what you can get from a first year regime that you've never seen before. And with the Raiders specifically, and that offensive line specifically, where I understood why they came into the year with this group of guys. Like all of the young guys had enough flashes last year where you're like, okay, like let's see what they do in year 2 with Glaze and Powers Johnson. And then we know what Colton Miller is. And every single one of those guys has regressed. They have not got, it's not that they haven't gotten any better, it's that they've gotten worse. So you combine that side of the player development stuff with the fact that we were wondering, what will Chip Kelly be? Right? Will Chip Kelly be like a Todd Monken type offensive coordinator where he comes in and he's a real difference maker right away from the college game? That hasn't happened. And I think you combine all of that stuff with the fact that that's contributing to the way that the quarterback is playing, and he's playing the worst football that he has played since he became a starter again. And so from about 3 different angles, you have things just tearing down what this team is supposed to be offensively. And the end result is a game that looks like this.
And you know what I will say was like the ultimate, like just nail in the coffin for how bad this had to feel as the Raiders. It's like all of their best passing plays were ripped off the board by penalties. They had a 3rd and 7 early in the game that they convert, and then that gets ripped off the field with, I believe, a holding call. Then there's a really nice Ashton Genty 8-yard run later in the game. That gets taken back because Jack Besh is lined up offside.
Yeah, offensive offside.
And then Geno Smith later in the game, I think it was in the late 3rd quarter, had like a nice scramble drill throw that he gets like 12 yards on. They move the sticks. That also gets called back for, I think, a holding. Like it
was a personal foul on Stone Forsythe.
Yes, that's what it was. It was a personal foul. And so it's like even when they had a moment, it just gets taken off the board and they don't even get that.
A typical NFL game has what, like depending 8 to 10 possessions. Like a team gets 8 to 10 possessions.
Mm-hmm.
It's so wild. Patrick Mahomes played 5 possessions in this game, 4 touchdowns and a field goal, and they're just like, all right, hit the bench.
He was out at the beginning of the 4th quarter.
Hit the bench.
Yeah, the Dolphins were supposed to be heavily featured in the WTF segments this year. The Raiders were not, and so with one of those teams, this is a little bit more disappointing than the other.
It makes you wonder where it's headed. I mean, like Geno Smith doesn't seem long for this. Like if this is what you're going to get out of him.
Yeah, we'll revisit that conversation.
Yeah, we can do
we're
that
gonna hit the
time,
Raiders game on the we're gonna hit the Raiders Chiefs game on the hangover tomorrow, simply because I want to watch the Chiefs offense. And so we will be talking about that game more at length. Whether that's good for our health, I think we can debate that. Let's change the mood here a little bit and talk about a few things that made us romantic about football in week 7.
I mean, this thing was a thing of beauty.
Each week, I like to pick out a couple moments that just, made us feel nice and warm and fuzzy about the NFL in week 7 in a given week. Derrik, why don't you start us off? What made you feel romantic about football in week 7?
Sometimes cool players just do cool shit. And Jaycee Horn had a really cool interception this week. He was just playing as the outside corner. They tried to, I think it was Alan Lazard. They tried to run a post on him. By this point in the game, Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback, and he tries to rip this post route to the very back, like literally throwing onto the goalpost. And Jaycee Horn just plucks it out of the air with one hand, like while he is sprinting. Like it just looks like a 10 out of 10 Golden Glove, like outfielder type of play. And just as soon as I saw that when it came up on the screen, I was like, that is the coolest play I'm going to see this week. Like sometimes again, cool player does cool thing, and it's as simple as that.
And he had another crazy interception in this game. He had 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. Again, when the cool player can do a cool thing, it's just like he's phenomenal.
I'm really glad that the Panthers aren't like an absolute mess. I'm really glad that the Panthers aren't a fixture in the WTF segments that we're doing every single week. There was a moment where we did an under the hood about the Panthers offense. We were like, man, I did not want to be this frustrated watching this team. And it wasn't great offensively today, but they've had some really nice moments over the last couple of weeks. And the defense is absolutely playing better than it did last year when it was a historical nightmare. And so the fact that this team is competitive and their exciting players are doing exciting things, I'm happy for that. I'm glad that Panthers fans are getting to at least enjoy something this season.
2nd place in the division.
Yeah.
What did we say earlier today? First time above 500 since Matt Rule. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, they had that stretch where they won too many games and then traded for CJ Henderson. I remember that very well.
They started 3-0 in 21, I think, and it's been a long road here. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad they got off the mat.
The Jets are essentially in the same place the Raiders are, where there was supposed to be like some semblance of hope coming into this season with a new regime, and they benched Justin Fields, Derrik, like at the beginning of the third quarter of this game because of how it was going offensively. A week after Aaron Glenn completely dismissed that as like a thought that deserved any sort of merit. And now Justin Fields gets the hook like 5 days after he berated reporters for even suggesting that should be a possibility.
And like, I think the worst part of it is like, I think you do that in service of thinking like Tyrod Taylor will give us a little bit more stability here and we'll be able to run the offense a little bit. And like, technically that was true in some sense, but then he has 2 picks that he throws, like did not complete as many of his passes. Like, I think the ideal backup version of Tyrod Taylor that I love existed definitely 4 years ago. I don't know if that version of him exists anymore, especially with what he is surrounded with on this Jets team.
How old is Tyrod Taylor at this point? He's 36 years old.
Yeah, like it's, that's about when it starts to go away for a lot of these quarterbacks.
My moment that how can you not be romantic about football in week 7? Watching the Bears run game today. I mean, there are few better feelings when you watch your NFL team play than them just deciding we're going to crush the other team's spirit with what we're going to do on the ground. The offense was inconsistent, sloppy in the first half. Like they were up 13-0 because of multiple turnovers. They had a 30-yard touchdown drive, but the passing game, there were penalties. There were moments where it kind of looked a little bit like it did over the first month of the season in stretches over the first quarter or so. And what looked different was the running game for the second straight week showing up the way that they did. In the second half, they were up 20-6 at the start of the second half. The Bears ran the ball on 2/3 of their plays in the second half. And while doing that, had a 61% rushing success rate. In the second half alone, they had 20 carries for 128 yards and 7 first downs on the ground. Overall, they racked up 222 yards on the ground. That is the most rushing yards from a Bears running back room in a single game in 8 years.
Our wonderful community over on Discord that I encourage you to go check out if you're listening. During this game, some of the gang on there were like, I bet Robert's going to be upset about this. Like it's sloppy and all this other stuff. And I was like, I promise you, he's not. The way they're running this football right now.
The problem in the Raider game, and the one that people always keep bringing up, and it's like why I wasn't happy about that game. They got outplayed on both sides of the ball. Like down to down, they got outplayed on both sides of the ball and created a bunch of turnovers. That was not the case with the Bears defense in this game against the Saints today. They created a bunch of turnovers, but they were also kicking ass for a good majority of the game. And you combine that with the fact that, yeah, Caleb looked a little out of sorts. It was not the best game overall from the passing offense, but their ability to assert themselves on the ground for the second week in a row, there's at least something you can tap into. This is not that sort of performance. There's a lot of stuff here that's worth being excited about, even if there were some frustrating elements to it.
The small thing I want to say for them getting into like they actually started kicking some ass was like this was the first team that got Spencer Rattler to go back to like I'm just gonna throw this shit type of mode, which like he hadn't done all year, and like they just stopped him for those first like 10 attempts. He was like, I don't care anymore, man. I'm just gonna start chucking it.
Seattle's the only other team that's really beaten New Orleans' ass, and that's what I was gonna say. Like I don't want to make any sweeping proclamations about the Bears, but they were favored by 3 or 4.5. And I mean, the Saints scared the Bills. The Saints scared the Patriots. The Saints beat the Giants. They scared the shit out of the 49ers. I thought this would be a really tough game. And even early in the second half, it looked like we were going to have to settle in for some second half drama. And then the Bears just pressed down on the accelerator. And it was for the Bears to win this game in very unstressful fashion impressed me, even if it's not like a ground shattering result.
Yeah, honestly, the most frustrating thing about this game to me is like losing cornerbacks. Like it's more about like, oh man, the Bears are playing pretty well. I wish their guys weren't getting hurt. Now, I think there's a lot to like with this performance from the Bears today against the Saints. All right, Dave, you're up here. What made you romantic in week 7 about the NFL?
Let's keep it in the NFC North. We mentioned him when we talked about the Packers off the jump, but I think Micah Parsons deserves more than a mention for what he did on Sunday against Arizona. And what's romantic about it is think back to when the Micah Parsons trade happened. If you're a Green Bay Packer fan, you hear that news and you are on cloud 9 for the next 3 days, daydreaming about what that could mean and what having Micah Parsons on your team could be. And you got it in this game. I mean, he's been good all season long, but this is what a field tilting edge rusher can do for your football team. I got his stats right here. 10 10 pressures on the day, 3 sacks, just was a nightmare. And I highlighted a few. He's almost single-handedly the reason for so many Arizona drives stalling out. Midway through the first quarter, pressures the hell out of Jacoby Brissett on 3rd and 8 from the Green Bay 8-yard line, gets him to leave the pocket. Cardinals wind up kicking a field goal. Early fourth quarter, bullies Jonah Williams, pressures Jacoby Brissett into a throwaway. Might have had, I think he had the running back like in the flat with a chance to make a play. He has to throw it away. Very next snap, bullies poor Jonah Williams again and sacks Jacoby Brissett to force a field goal. And then obviously gets the sack with 30 seconds to play. That just kind of ruined Arizona's last gasp. They don't gain any more yards after Micah's sack on 1st and 10 from the 26. Does Jonah Williams, I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry to keep saying your name, but he did the hula hoop around him where it looked like he was doing the training camp drill. That's what Micah Parsons is for. And maybe like when you're daydreaming about it, maybe you're thinking of it happening in a playoff game. But I mean, you said it at the top, like almost single-handedly, like being such a huge reason why you win this game. That is why you do a trade like that. And I know some Packer fans are probably frustrated about how close these results have been, but that's gotta make you feel warm inside where you're like, that guy can do shit like that when the game is on the line.
That's, you go get a guy like that for him to be a closer in those sorts of moments when maybe everything isn't going exactly right for you. And that's exactly what happened for the Packers today. All right, before we get out of here, let's talk about what we learned from week 7.
You know, I think I've learned something today.
Today wasn't super easy to come down on like an overarching lesson that we learned in week 7. I think the one that kind of crept up as I was thinking about it is just that when we look at teams going from year to year and we look at what they did in their offseason, and I think teams think this way about themselves sometimes, they like to think, all right, this is going to be the growth that we're going to show, the development we're going to show, the progress that we're going to show is going to be linear, right? We're going to do one thing one year, and then the things that we were good at, we're still going to be good at those things. And the things that we were bad at, we're going to be better at those things because we're going to address them. And so we're going to take a step from where we were last season to where we want to go. And that's just never how the league goes, right? Like Washington gets very aggressive this offseason. They go get Laramie Tunsil. They sign Deebo Samuel. They get even older on defense. They're like, our time is now. Like, we're going to do this right now. And now we just kick them off the table because it feels like their season is slipping away from them. Even something with the young quarterbacks. We'll talk about the Sunday night game tomorrow when we do the hangover show, but there hasn't been that sort of progress from the young quarterbacks. Like Bo Nix doesn't look like a better quarterback now than he did last year. If anything, I think he looks a little bit worse. Michael Penix has had his moments where he's really struggled this season. And so and then on the flip side of that, there are teams where there was no progress to this point last year, and then suddenly they completely surprised us in every way. Like the Colts didn't feel like the Colts were building to this moment, right? It feels like the Colts kind of showed up out of nowhere. And so I think it's just important to remember that what happened last year and even what happened at the end of last year in any given season in the NFL probably matters less than we think it does, right? Like every year is its own thing when it's kind of this living, breathing thing that changes all the time. And today was at least a subtle reminder that that's always true.
It's such a well-worn cliche. Coaches always try to like get that out of their teams' heads, especially like good teams where like, hey, put the division champion's hat away, get rid of it, whatever. Like this is a different group of guys. It's a different team. That's the cliche. It also applies to teams that maybe weren't that good, where like this is again a completely different team with
the Patriots, right? Like the Patriots look like a completely different team. The Patriots didn't build to this moment. Like it just, every year there's always those 3-4 teams that come completely out of nowhere, and the 3 or 4 teams we thought would build on what they did last year can't do that. And I think this week and just even the first 6 weeks in the NFL, 7 weeks, have been a very good reminder of that. Speaking of the Patriots, we will hit the New England Patriots Titans game on the hangover tomorrow. We'll also be chatting about Chiefs Raiders, and we will be discussing the Sunday night win for the San Francisco 49ers, an impressive win against the Falcons team that knocked off the Bills last week. So looking forward to that. For now, that is all we've got. Sincerely appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you very soon.